Hi, it's mail call video time, and as you can see, we've got a large pile of stuff in the corner of the shipping room, and I was told that yesterday the second tier of the pile began, and I need to go through some of this stuff and open it up and put it away where it belongs because it's taking up too much room. We also have a whole bunch of stuff on the shipping table that's in the way, and Cindy said it's got to go. You got to go through it, and you got to put it away where it belongs because it's jamming up everyone's style around here. So let's see how much of this we can get through. Some of this stuff over here, it's been here for months, and I don't even know what it is. Let's go ahead and see how much of this we can get through and see what we got. Alright, so the stuff on the table, these are actually things that people, local customers or local people have dropped off at the office just to give to us. In this box, this is sort of a mixed box full of stuff. All of these little packets in the pink bubble wrap came from one fella. Put those out here to take a look at them. These all came from, we'll put that aside, these all came from a local NuTone Service Center where the owner retired, and there was a lot of, I guess, miscellaneous stuff left in storage. People that are dealing with the remnants of his business got a hold of me and said, if you want them, we'll drop them off. We'd rather give them to you than throw them away. So what most of these are modules being electronic circuit boards for NuTone SM428 stereo intercom master station. We can get these opened up here. And these are a good example of rare, they are rare, mostly because SM428s are rather rare. Stereo intercom systems were never the big sellers that NuTone probably wanted them to be because the additional cost for the master station plus all the additional stereo speakers you would have to have ran up the cost of a system quite a lot. And in most cases, those systems would only have maybe one or two or maybe three pairs of stereo speakers. All the normal sized bedrooms would have monaural speakers, and the additional cost for the additional more expensive master station and so forth, it just didn't always pay out. So rare doesn't always mean valuable, also because since there aren't that many SM428s out there in the world, I don't think, there aren't that many people looking for parts for them. So what we've got here are, we'll do these two separately. These four here, these are all amplifier modules. And this has a little Class D amplifier IC right here under the heatsink, and some power supply and filtering components for the amplifier IC. These are plug-in modules, that's why they have the 5 pins here, and they plug into the main board. These are fairly reliable. The capacitors get old and need to be replaced, but it's a pretty easy board to work on. These are, I was told, these are all factory refurbished modules that came from NuTone. So the way it used to work in the old days, if you had a customer with one of these that was bad, you would pull a new one out of your stock, go out to their house, plug it in their set, make it play again, and then you would take the defective one, send it back to NuTone. They would repair it and test it to make sure it was good, and then it went back in this inventory, and somebody else would reuse it, and they were recycled over and over again. The amplifier IC down in here, it's very similar to the amplifier IC that's used in an IMA 406 and IMA 303. It's a slightly more powerful version, just a little bit, not a lot, but it's a very similar type of design because the SM428 is the fundamental basic platform design is a IMA 406. So we've got 4 of these, and we've got 2 or 3. These are primary power supply modules for an SM428. So what you have here are some 1N4007 diodes for full wave bridge rectification. You've got some power supply capacitors, a few resistors, some little ceramic capacitors here, and like that. And these, again, easy to work on. That's one of the nice things about SM428's little modular boards. One single-sided, easy to work on. Mostly just age-related problems with these. They get old and tired, and capacitors need to be replaced. Back in the day, these are from probably the late 70s. I don't know if you can see that or not. They used Nippon Chemicon capacitors, top quality back in the day. None of this rubbish with brands that you can't pronounce the name because they have no vowels in them. Top line parts back in those days. So we've got 3 of those. That's kind of nice. And then these 2 are actually different. These are the same. These are not SM428 parts. These are NuTone 469 auto call transfer modules. These are used with the model 478 apartment house intercom control amplifier, and these are used for dual entry buildings where you have 2 entrances with 2 separate directories, and when you install this module on your standard 478 amplifier, whichever directory is the one that the visitor pushes the button on to call to an apartment, it locks out the second directory and locks out the second door, so the conversation is only between the door where the visitor is and the apartment, and when the apartment resident releases the door to let them in the building, it only unlocks the door where the visitor is, and the other door is locked out. So we have 2 of these. Again, these are not parts that are used in most installations, but when you've got 2 of them, and I think I've got 2 other ones in stock also, when you've got 2 of them, and again, I think they're factory refurbished modules, so they should be perfectly good to go. They come in handy because when you need one, you need one. The way you always have to look at apartment house jobs is you've got a small village of people who are inconvenienced because their intercom system isn't working, and when it needs to be fixed, it usually needs to be fixed right away. So if you've got a couple of these in stock, you can just run out to the job, swap it out, and you're good to go. So these will come in handy one day. The next thing that's up is what else is in the box here. This was dropped off by a fella a while ago, and he was, I guess, remodeling. He came by, I wasn't here, Cindy was here, and he dropped it off. He said that he was remodeling his house, and the decision was made not to keep the intercom system because the wall in the kitchen where it was located was being taken out, and there was no other good place to put it. And what we've got here is a really clean, nice looking model 2090 master station. 2090 is the mid 60s 3-wire system. It's AM FM radio, up to 8 remote stations, pretty standard kind of thing, pretty solid state design on the back. It's a nice clean example, possibly a good candidate to be rebuilt, refurbished, and used as a complete unit instead of becoming a parts unit. So we've got the master station, and he was nice enough to bring the wall housing along with it. So I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Next up is another donation from a local customer, another big box, and what we've got here is a NuTone N256162. It's a 61 model because it's got the gold finish on it. I don't know how well that shows up on the camera. These were available in both a chrome finish and the gold finish. I personally have always liked the gold finish better. I think it's classier looking. And this one was made in June of 1964. And this also came out of a house that's being remodeled. I talked to the fellow when he first bought the house, and he had plans to restore the system and keep it, but apparently his idea was vetoed, and the system came out. He said he didn't want to throw it away, so when he took it all out carefully, he packed it all up and sent it to me. This is a really nice, clean, original example. It's got the terminal strip. He carefully cut all the wires off. Also, possibly a good candidate for a rebuild at some point. It's in pretty good condition. It would clean up really nicely. One of the things you have to be careful of if you have one of these is on the gold finished master stations, the gold finish is some kind of coating that's put on over the chromed plastic of the faceplate to turn it gold. And if you wash these, which is what we normally would do, normally when we wash faceplates, we just use warm water and a toothbrush and a rag, and we don't use any chemicals or much anything unless they're really, really dirty and we know it's safe. What can happen on these is if you run hot water on the gold finish over the chrome, over the gold coating, it will melt or unadhere whatever the coating is, I don't know, and it kind of lifts up off the chrome finish and it'll float away down your drain and you'll end up with a chrome master station. So if you clean these, you have to do it really, really carefully, and you don't use hot water because you'll melt the finish off of it and then you'll end up with a shiny chrome one, or silver. So got to be careful. So he sent me the master station, and he also sent me a box full of speakers and rough-ins. We've got room rough-ins for the remote stations. We've got the master speaker rough-in with the mounting brackets, and a nice selection of 5-inch inside speakers. He did bring me a raggedy old door speaker, which we'll do something with, and a speaker that looks like it's probably outside. It's kind of dirty and gross, especially on the back. Could have been outside, could have been in a garage, something like that. We've got half a dozen 5-inch inside remote stations, also June 1964, right here. And these are the ones that are in sand beige with the black knobs. So that's one of the reasons you know they're early. One of the things about these early ones is they have better speaker cones than later ones. The green speaker cones like this, in the earlier ones, they have bigger magnets. They're still 45 ohm speaker cones, but they have much bigger magnets on them than the later ones that they made in the late 60s and through the 70s. And these are a better quality, better sounding speaker cone than the later ones. So these come in handy. These mostly, every once in a while somebody needs a complete one because theirs gets gone missing somehow or it gets broken. Knobs are very popular for them, but really lots of times these end up being parts units because the switch assemblies are easy to swap out, as are the speaker cones. I recently had a fella in Las Vegas contact me. His system, the paper in the inside speaker cones, I guess because of the heat and the dryness in Las Vegas, the paper cones are just deteriorated and thin, and he said if you just push on it with your finger like this, they just tear and crack, and they sound really, really bad. So he got a bunch of speaker cones from me and swapped them all out to get his system up and working again. Okay, now on to the mystery boxes. Like I said, some of these have been here for months, and sometimes I know kind of what people are sending me, sometimes I don't. Things just show up. Most of these have been here long enough that I have no real idea. So let's go ahead and open it up. This is from a fellow named John. He's in Ohio, the heartland of NuTone. Go ahead and open this up. And let's see what John sent me. Apparently, oh, it's a chime. Check it out. And it's a metal cover, and it has this cool torch on it here. So that tells me kind of where it is. Oh look, packing material on the floor. We better use the scissors. Check it out. Alright, box goes on the floor. So what we have here is a really early NuTone 2-note chime. 2-note chime. And I know from the based on the cover and some of the other clues that this is a pre-war, most likely late 1930s NuTone chime. And you can tell that because, one, I know NuTone chimes. Two, it's got these little knurled connectors right here. much like the ones that I had on my Lionel train transformer when I was a kid. And these are typically late 30s, early 40s NuTone chime parts. And what we have here are, we have the two brass resonating tubes here, and we have our two tone bars here and here. And it's a two-door chime because you've got, yeah, it's a two-door chime because you've got two solenoids. So one of them would be a single note for the rear door, and the other one is two notes for the front door. The grommets are all but gone here on it, so we don't know what it's actually going to sound like. Let's see if we can get something out of it. It would sound a lot better with grommets, and that's something that we'll have to do. And then of course, if you put the cover on it, you end up with this, which is probably very stylish for the late 30s or early 40s. I would say that the finish on it looks pretty original. Down here we've got the NuTone label. It says NuTone Chime Door Signal, NuTone Chime, Cincinnati, Ohio. Since it says Cincinnati, Ohio instead of Eggleston Avenue, it's probably 1940 or just up until World War II started, because they changed the dates on things after that. It says patent number, can't really read it, patented United States. Nice old chime. And a particularly nice cover. Based on the inside, it's probably all original finish. It could just be that it's a little bit dirty and it needs to be washed up. It's got a little bit of paint on it, but generally it's in pretty good shape. Not bad for being 80 years old. Pretty good. Let's see what's up next. Next up is a mystery box from a fellow named Roland. He's from Rhode Island. And let's see what Roland sent us here. Got some newspaper, more newspaper, nothing else in there. Apparently Roland shops at Whole Foods. And yes, I will get called out for making a mess on the floor with all the packing materials, but I'll try to get it cleaned up before everyone shows up this morning. And here we have an L model chime base. And this is, oops, had a plunger fall out already. Look at that. Good save. Usually when you drop one of these, they roll somewhere and they disappear and you never find them again. So we'll put it up there for now so we have it. This is actually rather interesting because I have a base like this in here right now for repair, and this is a version of an L model chime base that I actually have never seen before, other than the one that the fellow sent in for repair. And this is interesting because this is from an L46. So we sort of consider L model chimes to be 1960s chimes. K model chimes are 1950s chimes, and then L's 1960. This one is clearly dated September 1957. So, like good NuTone tradition, not all things come out in the decades that you think they come out. Sometimes things come out earlier. And what makes this interesting is, and I was actually going to do a video on the other fellow's chime base, is this is sort of a hybrid design. This is has some aspects of a K model chime. The chassis, the gray part, is very much like a K model chime, but the motor with its little circuit board underneath and the terminal strip here is more like an L model chime. The volume adjustment here, the swinging pointer, that's like a late K model chime. It actually has an off position up here at the top, so if you move the pointer all the way up to the top, it actually turns the chime off altogether. That's definitely a late K model chime feature, not something you see on most L model chimes. But the other thing that's interesting about this, which I'm working on with the one I'm trying to repair is this is a 4 or 8 note chime, and there's actually a little switch down here under the motor that you can move the lever for 4 or 8, but on the back it's got this unusual little part right here on the back of number 3 solenoid. So here we have the 4 solenoids. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this I've never seen on any NuTone chime before, and you'll have to watch the other video. I can't take this apart right now. This is actually sort of a switch assembly, and the plunger is different on solenoid number 3 than the other 3 solenoids, and it activates one of the other solenoids. So it's kind of a weird design, and I think it's because these are the first chimes that NuTone made with some type of circuit board, and again you'll have to watch the other video when I post it. There's a circuit board underneath. You have the Telecron motor, you have the little armature drive assembly under the motor, and it has a 4-arm wiper assembly or armature assembly that rotates on traces on the fiberglass circuit board that's underneath it. And I think, although I haven't actually figured it all out yet, that they had a problem with designing the circuit board to make the 4 and 8 note sequence work properly in the limited amount of space on the circuit board. Maybe, I'm not sure about that. And this switch assembly made up for the inability to design the circuit board correctly. So this is actually fortuitous. How's that? $2 word this morning. Because it gives me another example of the one I'm trying to figure out and fix to see how it actually works. So thanks, Roland. I appreciate it. Next up, heavy box comes from Ken in Chicago, someplace I want to visit someday. I always ask people when I talk to them on the phone if they're from Chicago whether they consider themselves to be East Coast or Midwest. And the way it sort of tends to divide out is if you live in the city, you're East Coast, and if you live out in the rural or country area, I guess, you're Midwest. And that's sort of the way it seems to divide out. So, don't know what we have here exactly. A lot of paper. Get rid of that. Oh, I see what it is. All right, the note. It's a look at that. It's a copy of a page out of probably a wholesaler's catalog with all sorts of NuTone door chimes. It's not an original. This looks like somebody printed this out or scanned it or something. We'll take a look at that more in a second. So what we've got here is you might have heard it. We've got more loose parts. Yep. Spring, cushions, all kinds of stuff. Can't lose those. So what we've got here is a NuTone model K40 chime. It's a tabletop chime with its fancy light colored cover. And this goes on here like this. It snaps on like this. And a K model chime, we can look here on our sheet that he sent us. The K model chime is called the symphonic. And the symphonic, or its other variations, it's a chime that NuTone made for a really long time. They made it all the way up through the early 50s, I think, and I think originally it came out in the early 40s. And it says here, a compact 8-note chime, only 14 inches high. Doesn't seem that compact to me. Walnut or limed oak cover. And apparently this is limed oak. Satin brass tubes and a gallery decoration. That would be this. It says NuTone on it right here. Special brass alloy tone bars, Telecron motor with selector switch, sounds 4 or 8 notes for front door, 2 notes for rear door, single note for third, 24-volt transformer included, 14 inches high, 8 inches wide, 3.5 inches deep, weighs 9¼ pounds. When's the last time you saw a doorbell that weighed 9¼ pounds? Model K40. List price in, let's say, who knows? It's early enough. It's probably early 50s. $34.50. How's that? That's a lot of money to spend on a door chime. Right here, $34.50. Because if you look through what we have here is, let's see, what's our least expensive chime? Non-electric, that doesn't count. L, that's just a transformer. So if we go up here to A, here's A. A is called Modern Chime. Oyster white plastic cover, has reversible red and gold metal grill, so they gave you some kind of design option there. 2 notes for front door, 1 note for rear door. It only weighs 2.5 pounds. List price was $5.95 right there. And I'm going to guess that even in those days, nobody paid list price for a door chime. I'm sure you got at least 10 or 15% off that. So you probably could get a door chime for around $5, or if you were like bucks up, you would spend the whopping $34 and buy the really jazzy one. So this is a really nice chime, and actually I'm going to do a series on this class of chime because they sort of have their own unique sort of place in NuTone chime design. See right here, we have K40. It has what I guess would be a date or a code, manufacturing code. It says 10A30. I don't have any idea what that means. I'm going to guess that could be 1953, 10th month, possibly. One of the things about these, nothing on the back, one of the things about these, which they mentioned in the ad, which is a story I've heard, get this, has to do with the tone bars. The story I was told once by an old timer at NuTone, somebody that worked there back in the 50s until he retired, was that when Mr. Corbett founded the company and he was working with a professor at the University of Cincinnati to develop the sounds of NuTone chimes, they worked with a local foundry company to develop a formula for the metal used in the tone bars in NuTone chimes. And apparently that company, it was a family-owned local business, that company produced the metal that was used in NuTone tone bars from the beginning in the late 1930s all the way up through sometime in the early 1960s or maybe middle 1960s. He couldn't remember exactly. And it was a special proprietary formula of metal, so it's an alloy, and it gave all NuTone chimes their unique sort of tonal quality, I suppose. And at some point, that changed, and I think what happened, the story, what he told me was, I think it was around the time that Hamilton Beach bought NuTone, and it became Scoville Hamilton Beach NuTone. And sometime around that time, they switched the suppliers, and that family business went on for a while and then closed, and the formula was lost at that point because it was proprietary and they never shared it with anyone else. So the tone bars in these early chimes are unique and different than in later models. Next up is a box from John. John lives in Bakersfield, California. Not too far from here, a couple 2.5 hours or so from here. Bakersfield, the starting point of California's all new and all important bullet train to Los Angeles. And I don't know if any of you have read anything about that, but it has generated a lot of controversy because it's supposed to be high-speed rail to Los Angeles, but apparently it's not going to be that high speed, and a lot of people don't really want it, so don't know. Anyway, maybe John's unloading stuff to get out of Bakersfield before it all happens. Oops, something else in the box. Oh yeah, don't want to throw this away. Got a transformer, some instructions, an owner's manual, and what we have here is, inside the shrink wrap, I always like this kind of stretchy, self-sticking wrap here. Kind of like the Handy Wrap or the Saran Wrap, which I suppose are brand names that you can buy at the supermarket. We have a NuTone LA. Is it an LA? Should be an LA. Let's see. Yeah, we have a NuTone. It's an LA60. And an LA60 was the top of the line NuTone electronic musical chime back in the day. This one, by all accounts, oh, it's an LB60. Sorry, I was wrong. There's a couple different versions of it. There's LA60s, LB60s. Mostly it has to do with the grill style. The LA60s perhaps are the ones with the, they have a cloth grill here on the top, and then now we have the molded plastic with the faux wood grain. But it's a real wood oak case, and this is the lighter colored one, which is kind of nice. And an LB60 was the top of the line electronic musical programmable door chime back in the day. These were available, they came out in the late 70s, and they were made up through the, it's around the early or mid 90s, and then they were discontinued. The thing that made these different than like the LB55s is that while it has 16 songs pre-programmed into it, by using the keyboard, which you can see has a lot of information on it, and also it's required to have the operating manual, and it's also required that you're able to follow along. You can, if you can figure it out, you can translate sheet music into programmable codes. So you can take sheet music for any song that you like, and if you can follow along the instructions on this page and this page, see musical information here, and I think this page and this page and this page, more musical information, and this page and this page, and it just goes on. And here's some predetermined examples that you can program in that they figured out for you. I think they did this to give you hope after getting through all those other pages. You have songs here like Take Me Out to the Ball Game and Easter Parade and The Eyes of Texas and My Old Kentucky Home. You have quite a bit. Fight on USC. Oh, you have some fight songs. You have the fight song for Washington State College, Louisiana State College, Hold That Tiger. So they give you a bunch of good examples in here. You can program in your favorite song if you can make it through the instructions and figure out how to do that, and have your door chime play your most favorite songs. I actually sold one of these to a fellow once. It was in the early 90s, I think. Supposedly, he was buying it. He was Michael Jackson's, yes, the king of pop. He was his representative, and he wanted one of these chimes because he wanted to program his own songs into it. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't really know, but he did buy a chime from us, and that's what he said. So, I don't know, maybe Michael Jackson had one of these at Wonderland Ranch, which is down in Santa Maria. That's Southern California. It's near between Pismo Beach and Santa Barbara. And maybe he had a NuTone concerto chime, and it played Thriller when somebody came to his door. I don't really know. Next up is a box from Joyce. Joyce lives in Tucson, Arizona. We have a NuTone dealer in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm not sure exactly how close Tucson and Phoenix are to each other, but we have a NuTone dealer in Phoenix who sends his intercom master stations to us for repair. And I remember I talked to him I think it was last summer, and it was really hot there in good old Phoenix. It was about 115 degrees, and he said he was staying inside out of the heat because he decided it was too hot to go work when he was walking across his parking lot and his shoes were making marks in the asphalt because it was so soft. So apparently today's chime day, because this is another chime. What do we have here? We have a note. Says, thanks very much. Thought you would like to have this. Joyce. Cool. All right. More stuff on the floor. Got a chime. And probably a transformer. Yep. Kind of a little crusty NuTone 101, which is only 10 volts at 15 watts. Standard sort of tract house, most minimal transformer you can possibly have with a door chime. Not a great choice for this particular chime. Go ahead and open this up. What we have here is, this is a NuTone, it's an LC38, and an LC38 is a 4 or 8 note, 3 short tube chime. It's not a Westminster chime, it's a 4 or 8 note chime. Westminster chimes, you have to have 4 different notes, so these were never called Westminster chimes. These are just 4 or 8 note chimes. They managed the 8 notes pretty convincingly with just 3 tone bars, but it's just a small point, and we have this reasonably decorative sort of Spanishy looking cover on it. These were actually fairly popular. This one is from 1976, and I actually have quite a few of these. They're not cosmetically very popular today because it's just not a look that people are really putting in their houses, I guess. But on the other hand, the base assemblies are all fairly universal, so they have a lot of applications. These were also available. These have the satin brass resonator tubes. They were made, I think it was in the earlier 70s, where these were like a satin nickel finish, and those look pretty nice also. So looks like it's all original. It'll come in handy one day. Plungers apparently are freed up. The reason that this is not a good choice, this 101T transformer, is that it's much, much too small for that size chime. And actually, I said this wrong. This is 16 volts at 10 watts, not the other one, not 10 volts at 16 watts. So this is much too small for a chime like that. This at a minimum should be 16 volts at 30 watts. And I have a feeling that this was not the transformer that came with this chime. This is probably the transformer that was installed in the house when it was built by the electrical contractor or somebody for a standard 2-note chime. The reason this is not a good choice is 10 watts isn't enough. When this runs, you have to power the motor, and it has to run through its entire cycle. And while 10 watts is plenty to drive the Telecron motor assembly, when the solenoids are energized and the plungers strike, they draw a lot of current. And if they draw more current than the transformer can readily supply, the motor will stall and stop. And then it won't begin again on its own because it's in the wrong position. And then that's when you get calls about, somebody came to my door and my doorbell rang the first 2 notes and then it stopped, and 4.5 hours later it rang the rest of them. And that's because finally the motor eked out enough to start turning again, and then it ran through the cycle and it made it all the way through. So much, much too small of a transformer for this size chime. Okay, we're tearing through these. We're down to this one and one more. So this one came from a gal named Paula, and Paula lives in Aurora, Illinois. And it's a big heavy box, and no, I haven't opened it. This is just what happened during the shipping. So you can see it's still taped over there, so I haven't opened it. So let's go ahead and pop this one open. A lot of paper. Oh, we got all kinds of stuff in here. Wow. Okay. Get ready. So we've got an instruction booklet for a solid-state stereo intercom system, SM428. So we've got SM428 stuff coming out our ears. We've got an ISA 64 door speaker. We've got an ISA 35 inside 3-wire speaker. Ooh, look. We've got an old-fashioned box of NuTone IW6 200 3-pair wire. It says was model 447 back in the old days. Look at that roll of vintage wire still on its spool. Easy to tell it's all 200 feet. We've got a somewhat assembled NuTone SM428 master station. And we've got one inside 8-inch speaker in dark brown, everybody's choice of the day. Put that box over there. Let's start with this one really quick. So this is an ISA 38. So it's a 3-wire speaker. Got inside patio, talk, door, talk, and listen. You know it's an ISA instead of an IS because it has the buttons that the square buttons that you push up and down, or down and they spring back up. The later ones have a different style buttons, and the IS 38s have buttons that you push in and out. So that's how you know what that is. Brand new, looks like it's never been installed. That's very nice. We've got to go along with it. Same vintage ISA 35 5-inch speaker. Same vintage, same kind of switches. This one was made in 1977. So I assume they're both 77. These have their place. People need these sometimes. Sometimes the switches break. Sometimes painters get paint all over them, or they get damaged, or they're really, really discolored, and people are looking for a replacement, so they're always good to have. Here we've got an old school NuTone Scoville. This is an ISA 64. It's a 4-wire door speaker. It's a surface mount speaker, so you've got this little brown metal surface mount box. Aluminum plate mounts on the wall first, and there's a little screw top and bottom to hold the plastic cover on. This is a nice one. It's brown finish. It's got the gold accent instead of silver, and also it's early enough that we have the rectangular door signal, not doorbell, door signal push button like this. So this is a good piece to have because they don't really make anything like this anymore, and if you have one of these on your house and you need another replacement, what are you going to do? So that's kind of nice. And then, we already looked at the wire, and then we've got our SM428 with bits and pieces falling out. So, what do we have? We have what looks like a fairly complete, perhaps, I'm going to call it new old stock, or never installed, or I don't even think it was a display. Some of the ways you can tell is if it's been installed. You know, this was made in the this is late. This is January, February. This is February 1977. So if this had been installed 41 years ago, it would have paint on the edge because that's what always happens to them. It would be all dusty inside, and this one's about as clean and perfect as it can be. This cardboard piece is usually missing at this point because it's held on to the hinge screws down in here, and it always seems like it gets torn off. I would say this is about as perfect as you could find. The only thing that's kind of missing are the little center covers for some of the knobs. And two of them are actually here. They look like they fell off in transit. And these are, I always think these are interesting. These are to show the extent that NuTone went to make this a nice system. These are the little room selector control covers that go on the knobs like this. So you would take this and it sits in the middle. It was glued in originally, and it's got this kind of black and brown textured look to it. And these are not cardboard. These are actually little metal discs with a cover on them, and these fall off all the time. So this one's missing a few. Sometimes what I do with these when I rebuild these, because I can't find any material that really looks like this. Just have looked and can't really find anything that's a close match. So what always seems appropriate, which I like to do, is we actually have a round die cutter that's the right size, and I have some silver foilized heavy paper, and you can punch out replacements, and you put the chrome ones in, which kind of look like this area down here on the faceplate, and it makes them kind of shiny. I have a big one that can go here and one that goes in the tuning knob also, and it works because this is like the quintessential 80s intercom, late 70s, early 80s. It just has that 80s look to it, and it seems to work out pretty well. I've never had anybody say they didn't like it. So on the back, we've got amplifier modules, which you saw in the first part of the video. They just plug in here like this. They probably fell out during transit. And there's a retainer here, which I'll put in later. So what we've got here on the back, see if you can see all that. You've got primary power supply, multiplex board for the stereo, intercom and preamp and tone board here, 2 amplifier modules, door and talk listen control module, AM FM tuner, terminal board for all the remote speaker wirings, auxiliary inputs down here. It's a nice design. These are good to work on. Biggest problem on these nowadays is the room selector switches. They get really frozen up sometimes, and they're really hard to turn. And to get to them, to clean them, you have to take all of the boards off the back of the unit, and then way down in here where the audio jacks are mounted onto is the main board, or it's not called the motherboard, it's called the, I forget what it's called. It's not a motherboard. They call it something else that's similar to that. And you have to take all the screws out to take it out, but to do that you have to take the knobs off. And sometimes the knobs are really stuck on, and they don't want to come off the shafts. And if you don't know how to remove them carefully, you can break the switch that's soldered to the board behind the faceplate, and then you've got a real problem. So you have to be really careful of them. The other thing that happens on these, for some reason, you have these sliding controls here. So you've got treble, bass, and volume, all speakers, and these are fader pots, which are not available, so you have to be really careful with them. But they have these dual shaft knobs that don't want to come off like this, and they connect to each. These are 2 separate controls, and then the knob ties them together like that. These go missing for some reason. I don't know why, but they always do, and they're not used on any other NuTone model, so finding replacements is like really difficult. So this is actually quite a nice box full of stuff. Alright, and last one at the bottom of the pile, this one. And I have no idea what this is. This has been here since beginning of November last year. So whoever sent this to me sorry. Go ahead and open it up. They seem like they did a really good job packaging it. It says fragile all over it. I think that always makes people want to stand on it when it's in the delivery truck. Ah, there we go. Oh, I like that. Check it out. So on the box here it says original grade AA shell eggs, grade AA huevos in something or another. Anyway, should have taken Spanish in high school. We got egg crates. How's that? And cardboard. And more cardboard. And oh look, it's double boxed. Let's see if we can get this out. It's heavy. Gonna have to do it this way. Alright. Apparently, more egg cartons inside. Apparently this person sells on eBay, or maybe they used to sell on eBay and they've got a lot of the fancy eBay tape left over. I'll give them credit. They did an excellent job packaging it. I can relate to that. I had a fellow recently that repaired his 1975 IM406. And it was in his mother's house, and he bought the house, and he was restoring everything. And got it all rebuilt and everything, and packed it up, sent it back to him, and he sent me an email, let me know I received the intercom. He said it was crazy packaged. He said it took him like an hour to unpack the thing. So packaging is important. Oh, check it out. We've got a NuTone 2015-2016 in my preferred copper tone finish. And this one's pretty nice, and actually I remember this now. This is actually one that I bought on eBay. And these are becoming more of a popular retro model, and I'm actually going to do a series on them pretty soon where I show how to rebuild one. This one includes the wall housing. We've got some vintage NuTone 3-conductor wiring. Let's see, this one was made in January 1958. Check it out. Serial number 786306. And no, I don't think they made 786,000 of these. I don't know how the serial number works into production numbers, but January 1958. Check it out. If you had one of these, you were living the Jetsons lifestyle, that's for sure. So we've got the wall housing, and it's NuTone Battleship Gray, very heavy, and the wire, and it's interesting because on the wire we have little tags. We have south bedroom. Let's see what else we have. We have north east bedroom. Number 4 is Alan's room, and number 2 is southeast bedroom. So Alan gets called out. Maybe Alan was the kid at the time or something like that. If he was probably doing pretty well. And see, they used to give you these. These are actually wire markers. These were labels where you could peel the numbers off. Down here, they would peel off, and you could wrap them around the wires and then write here what room that was for. Because in those days, you have to remember, this is the second year that NuTone made intercoms. This was like an all new idea. So they did everything they could do to make it easy for people to install and understand how to deal with something like this. It's not the days of iPhones where everybody's got one, so, you know. And these are truly well-made and exceptional units. AM/FM radio, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tube design, and upcoming soon a series on how to rebuild one of these. Real glass dial for the radio, printed on the back of the glass with the radio scale. You can have up to 8 remote stations. I think some of these you could actually double up on. I'm not positive about that, but I think you could. Exceptional fidelity compared to the original 2011-2012. This is the 57, 58. This would be the first year production for this model, because the 2011-2012 came out in 1957, and that was an AM only model, and it was made along with this one when this one came out, so you had 2 different choices. Another unique design about these are they both use the same wall housing, they both use the same wiring, they both use the same remote speakers. The idea was that you could simply, you know, if you were building a house and money was an issue, you could buy the AM only model to begin with, and then at some time in the future when you were well heeled and had your finances under control, you could easily pop out the AM model and pop in the AM/FM model, hook it up, and you're ready to go. I don't think anybody ever did that, but that was the idea behind it. Anyway, so that's the mail call for today. I've got quite a mess. We have a wide selection of stuff, but the space on the floor over there is empty. Cindy's going to be really happy. I didn't talk about all the stuff in the other room that people have dropped off and all of that I've got to deal with too, but that's not really mail call stuff. That's just a lot of stuff. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting and you saw things that you have never seen before. If you have questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll answer them for you. If you like these kind of videos, let me know by giving it a big thumbs up, because that always helps on YouTube. There'll be a banner right here that you can click on the bell or the wheel and subscribe to our channel. You put in your email address, and when we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.